sharing his value for this session. So really thank you, Kundan, and welcome once again.
Thank you.
I would like to just introduce Kundan. Kundan Gurav is a co-founder at Transganization. He has done his BE in Electronics and Communications, and he is a certified behavioral analyst and an expert in experiential learning method. And he has been conducting behavioral workshops for more than past 12 years, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So really, once again, thank you, Kundan, and welcome. Over to you, Kundan.
Thank you, Shamji. Thank you so much. And thank you for everybody to join this program. We'll start this program with a disclaimer. If you look at our topic today, it is communication and conversation skill. It is not communication versus conversation, or it is not about difference between communication and conversation. Because if we take that subject, then we actually get into a conflict, because if you go to the information which is available, so there are two different schools of thoughts, or there are different schools of thought. Somebody says communication is more effective. Somebody says conversation is more effective. Some says there's an overlapping between these things. But when today in Gyan Jyoti, when we are talking about communication and conversation, specifically communication and conversation skill, so we will be looking, for our context, we will be looking at how we can leverage from these two things. Yes, of course, there is a difference between these two things, but going by the world view or going by the different schools of thoughts available there, probably we'll get confused. So instead of looking at it from that perspective, we will look at it from the practical usage perspective and leverage from both communication as well as conversation. For Transganization school of thought, conversation is art of crafting your communication. For Transganization school of thought, conversation is the art of crafting your communication. Communication can be one way, communication can be two way, but the conversation will always be two way. It cannot be considered as a conversation if there's no two-way communication. So from that perspective, we'll see how these two skills are important and how we can leverage as individuals, as parents, as professionals, as managers, as followers, as subordinates, as entrepreneurs, as freelancers, how each individual can leverage these two skills and become more effective in everything that we do. I personally believe that communication is something which is very, very fundamental to our sustenance, our survival, and our growth, majorly for our growth. The human evolution, in the journey of human evolution, the moment we started communication, or could be in the form of sign language, or in the form of pictures or drawings or sounds, the moment we started communicating, things were seen in a very different light altogether. And the exposure of an human being multiplied. So we're going to look at communication and conversation in today's conversation that I'm going to have with you. And I'm calling it conversation because it's going to be two-way. So probably all of us will not be able to talk to me or speak here, but we have a chat box, and that chat box becomes a link between us so that we can converse. So it's not going to be one-way download. There will be questions that I would be asking. I'm expecting the answers to come in the chat box. Okay, but those answers, I'm not looking at right or wrong. I'm not looking at whether your answer is right or wrong. I need answers. So I know there are people sitting around there and they are listening to me. And while they are listening to me, they are also contributing, So from that perspective, let's start the topic by me sharing a picture. And once I share this picture, I would want you to type in your chat box, who is this person? If you recognize, who is this person? What is the name of this person? Now, I hope my screen is visible, Apurvi.
Yes, it is.
Yes, sir, it is.
Yes, sir.
So I have shown a picture here, and I want all of us to write in the chat box the name of the person, if you know, if you have seen this person somewhere on TV or some hoarding, Okay. So answers started coming in. I want each one of us to contribute, because when you contribute, when you are typing from your end, the conversation is happening. I'm talking from here and you are replying, Okay, great. So there are answers coming. Somebody is saying Serena Williams, somebody is saying Venus Williams, then Serena Williams, Serena Williams, Serena Williams. Okay. Okay. So some of us are right, and some of us have got confused. I would not say some of us has got confused. No? Yeah, somebody has raised the hand. So we will unmute them once we go for question answer sessions, right? Okay. So if you have something to say, you can put it in chat box. So I'm getting answers, and only two answers are coming: Serena Williams and Venus Williams. Now this is not about whether she is Serena or Williams. Okay, the reality is she is Venus Williams. Okay, we all remember Serena, maybe because nowadays Serena is more into limelight, but the person that I'm showing here is Venus Williams. And I want to start this conversation by talking about a story which is known to a lot of people who are interested in sports. Serena Williams is not any ordinary player. She is one of those great players where the worldwide people admire her for her sports, for the way she played, the way she has won different titles. And that's Venus Williams. Now, once one of the journalists asked her a question that in many of the games that you have played, when there's a gap between two rounds and you guys get break, I have seen you sitting on your chair besides the ground, besides the court, and pulling out a small card, maybe the card size of a credit card that we hold, and reading something out of it. Can you tell us, what do you read in that card? Now the same question I'm asking the audience here, the participants here. What do you think? What do you think such a great player, every time she used to get a break while she's playing, she's referring to a small card, size of a credit card, what she must be reading? I want to understand from you, what do you think? What she must be reading in that card? The answers are expected in chat box. What do you think she is reading in that small card every time or most of the time when she's playing? Kya hoga? What it would be? What kind of data or information she pulls out every time when she is playing. So Vinod is saying to motivate herself. So Vinod, do you think there's some motivational quote in that? Some kind of motivational quote? Yes. Vinod says yes. Some kind of motivational quote would be written in that. Any other answer, besides what Vinod has told, some kind of a small prayer, Lakshmi ji saying there could be a small prayer, she's reading that prayer while she's playing, or there's some kind of motivational statement saying that, yes, you can win. Something like this, most of us would assume, that there is some kind of a prayer or some kind of a motivational statement which is written there, and she is reading that to motivate her. But when it was asked to Venus, she said, on that card, there are 7 basics written, which was taught to me by my first coach. When at the age of 7, when I picked up the racket first time, and when I was going through that coaching, the first time, the basics, 7 basics which were told to me, what is forward, what is backward, what is woolly. Those 7 basics are there on that card, and friends, a player like Venus Williams, which is on a global stage, at peak of her success, refers to the basics. So are basics important? Yes, basics are important. And if you believe that basics are important, please type in your chat box, basics are important, BAI. Let me hear from you that you believe that basics are important. Put in your chat box, BAI. Yes, I believe that basics are important. Basics are important. Yes, BAI. Meghna says yes, BAI. Anand Boy says yes. Manikandan says BAI. Basics are important. Good. Thank you for your response. Everybody believes in basics are important. As you are typing it on this chat box, if you have a subordinate or a friend around him, tell him basics are important. And so, guys, we're going to start the conversation. We're going to start this whole program by revisiting basics of the communication. Basics are important because everything is hidden there. Because I know I'm conversing to professionals, I'm conversing to people who have experience, I'm conversing to the people who are entrepreneurs or managers or dealers or entrepreneurs. So far you've been communicating. Wherever you have reached, communication has played a great amount of contribution in it. So probably we know what is communication. Some of us might be master communicators here, and so there is possibility that I might sit here with a thought process that, ye kya topic hai? Why communication? A very common topic, we've been communicating, we've been good communicators for a very long period of time. Why communication? And so we start this conversation, this program, with the basics of communication. And that's where we first visit. The process of communication. What is the process of communication? So when we talk about communication generally, many of you must have learned it in the school or college. In communication, there is a sender. There is a sender. Sender sends sender sends a message. Sender sends message. Now, when the sender sends the message, there is a receiver. There is a receiver who receives the message. So sender sends the message, receiver receives the message, and when receiver receives the message, receiver gives a feedback. And when the receiver gives the feedback, that's where the communication gets complete. Sender sends a message, receiver receives a message, and when receiver receives a message, he gives a feedback. And when that receiver comes to sender, the communication process completes. So if I consider this diagram, then there are two activities happening. There are two activities happening. There's the activity of sending. There's the activity of receiving. And then there's the activity of sending, and there's the activity of receiving. In the first case, it is sending of the message and receiving of the message. In the second case, it is sending of the feedback and receiving of the feedback. That's simple. That simple is the process of communication. But if that simple is the process of communication, then why there is so much of miscommunication? Why there is so much of misunderstanding? Why so many times we hear, "You never said it. I didn't understand what you said. Oh, so you mean that? Oh, I thought you mean this." So many times this happens. It reminds me of a joke, a story, or a funny story, that in a big commercial tower on 10th floor, there's a conference happening. There's a meeting happening in a conference room, very, very important meeting happening, and a very important delegates sitting there discussing a very important aspect. And that building catches a fire. That building catches a fire, and there's still time for fire brigade to reach there. So the facility manager calls one of the guards and tells him, "Ki boss, you climb till the take this rope and climb till the the top floor, and leave one end of the rope so that it can come down, and then people can catch hold of it and they can come down." So this guy runs, and then he takes that rope and he climbs there, and he stands on the top floor, and he releases the one end of the rope. As he releases the one end of the rope starts coming down. It reaches the ground floor, and in some time, the second end of the rope also comes down. And when this happens, the facility manager goes mad, and he says, "Are you mad? What I told you? I told you to release the one end." So he said, "I did exactly that. But you should have tied the other end to something." He said, "Sir, you never said that. You never said that." I did exactly what you said. Now, this might look little funny, or this might look little made of kind of a story. But look at our day-to-day conversation. Look at our day-to-day communication. Look at when we ask somebody, "Arey, why you haven't done this?" He said, "I did exactly what you told." But we said, when I said this, it means this also. When I told you release or throw the one end of the rope, it means that you should have tied the other end of the rope. So common sense. But the other person says, no, I have done exactly what you have told me. So why it happens that when we are in communication, when we are conversing, why it happens that we tell something, the guy hears something, he does something, we expect something, and what happens is far more away from what was expected. So if we are to look at it, there are certain filters operating around all of us. There are certain filters operating around all of us. These filters are present when the sender is sending message, and these filters are present when the receiver is receiving the message. They are very much evident, but those cannot be seen. They are there. They are at a very subtle level, but they cannot be seen. So if I have to look at these filters I can categorize these filters into three major categories. The first category is G, means generalization, or in other words, we can say assumptions. Excuse me, give me a moment. If I have to categorize these filters, then these filters can be categorized in three categories. First is generalization or assumption. When I'm telling something, I assume that ye aise hi hoga. When this facility manager told the other guy that throw the one end of the rope, he assumed that he will understand that the second rope has to be tied to something. When I tell somebody that we need to recruit this person or this position, I assume that he understands the expectations from the position. I generalize. And most of the times, these generalizations are coming from my past experiences. If there is a particular community and I got cheated from a particular community, or a particular surname is there, and with that surname, if I got cheated in past, if the other person who has the same surname, when I start communicating or when I start dealing with him, I have the assumption that this guy will be also the same. Of course, none of us can live. None of us can live life without assuming or without generalizing. You know, if I do not generalize, I will not be able to open the tap of the water, because everywhere I go, probably the water tap is different. But I generalize ki either up, down, sidewise, press something that I have to do, and the water will come. So generalization is important, but when in communication we generalize or we assume, we tend to do what we have understood. You know? And that is why the feedback is very, very important. And while giving feedback that I have understood, it cannot be yes and no. I can rephrase. I can rephrase what the other person has said. By rephrasing, I'm confirming that my understanding and the sender's understanding is the same. But while I am sending a feedback, again, there are filters operating. So when I'm rephrasing, probably the other person might hear what I'm saying from a generalization filter. No? So we'll see how to avoid the filters. Let's first understand the filters. The first filter is generalization or assumption based on my past experience. We do assumptions based on somebody's way of dressing. We do assumptions and generalization based on somebody's looks. We do assumptions based on somebody's tone. We do assumptions based on somebody's body language. And this generalization stops us from understanding the essence of the communication. Now, the point is, we cannot avoid or completely zero generalization, but having awareness that there are filters operating, I can consciously take actions to confirm that the kind of message that I have received and what I have understood and what the other person wanted to tell are the same things. Somebody told me the definition of communication, said communication is about sending, not about sending the message, but it is about sending the intended message. Sending the intended message, so that the other person is not confined to the shabdarth, but other person understands the bhavarth. That's what I would consider communication is. The second filter is called deletion. The second filter is called deletion. Many a times we hear this from our subordinates, from our bosses, from our kids, from our spouses, from our friends. You never said it. And then we are saying, is he lying? But we also believe deep within us that for such a matter, he would or she would not lie. But then what happened? I understand that we are not physically in presence of each other, but if possible, I would want each one of you to do a small activity sitting there. Okay. Just to understand the filter deletion. Okay. Wherever you are sitting there only, you have to do what I do. You have to do what I do. Take your hand like this. Okay. Start. Johnny, 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 Johnny. Oops, Johnny. I will repeat. Johnny. Oops. Johnny, 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 Johnny. Oops, Johnny. Now, if you would
We
have
could not
done,
see your full hand, Kundan.
yeah. Okay, so it's like this. Now it is visible.
Yeah, slightly behind. I think you'll have to take the hand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just this much. Okay. It's like thumbs up. And then I touch my finger here on the thumb. Okay. Johnny, oops, Johnny, 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 oops, Johnny. Now, if you would have done, I'm sure each one of must have, or most of us must have started with Johnny. Oops, Johnny, Johnny, Johnny. But the action before Johnny, that is missed. It happened in front of me, but I've just deleted it. Because I thought, okay, he's just clearing his throat. Now, on daily basis, we converse and communicate with so many people. And so many things, the small things get deleted. And probably the essence of the message was in something that I have deleted. It just happened in front of me and I ignored it. I didn't find it that important. And the essence of the message missed. So the first filter is generalization, second filter is deletion, and the third filter is called distortion. Distortion. These days, there is a activity of Chinese whisper. It is viral on the WhatsApp and internet. You know, that people are standing in line and then the first person is told something, then he tells to the second person, then the third person. And ultimately what happens is far very different than what the first person has demonstrated. Distortion is mixing your own understanding into the message. When somebody is telling me something, I add my things. You know, it is said in India, if you give rice to people and if it goes round and round, ultimately you get the khichdi, because everybody would have added something into it. You know? So distortion is about every time the message is passed on, every person adds his own thought or understanding into it. If we have to see how the distortion happens, we used to have these antennas and TVs in past. We used to have these TVs with antennas on our roof, and whenever there used to be a aeroplane, whenever the aeroplane passes, the whole screen gets distorted. You know? So distortion is like that. The original message gets a lot of things added, and the final message that reaches is far very different than the original message given. And in all the communications, even if it is a written communication, there is a filter, because the filter is, it is just besides my ears or my mouth. It is invisible, but it is there. It is coming from my past experiences. It is coming from me not being focused while the communication is happening. I miss on the word. Deletion happens. It is about, if something is given to me, I start putting my understanding into it, and it gets distorted. Now, the point is, if the communication process is so simple, sender sends a message, receiver receives a message, receiver gives a feedback, but there are filters operating, then what do I do? What do I do to reduce these filters? What do I do to reduce these filters? The fact of the matter is that I cannot 100% eliminate these filters. But of course, I can reduce these filters. The first thing that I can do is I can learn the skill of listening. The skill of listening. No? I'm sure we have heard about it. Listening is the most important thing. God has given us one mouth and two ears. So better speak less and listen more. I need not only listen, but I need to listen empathically. I need to listen empathically. When the other person is talking, let me put myself in his position and listen. And then I'm not only listening to the words. I'm listening to the words. I'm listening to the tone of the voice. I'm listening to the emotions. And I'm listening to the body language, or I'm reading the body language. And when I have all my senses focused on that communication and the communicator, by listening, by empathically listening, not only listening the words, but reading the body language, listening to the emotions, listening to the tone of voice, I can reduce these filters to large extent. Now, while I'm talking about this, we also spoke about certain parts or components of the communication. So there are three components of communication. One is word, two is voice or the tone of voice, and three is body language. Now I want each one of us to tell me, out of these three, what would be the most important or most contributing factor in communication. One is word, two is voice, and three is body language. If I have to asks this group that in chat box, write what would be the most contributing or most important aspect of the communication. In chat box, you can write, if you think, you can write 1, 2, 3 also, or you can always write word, voice, and body language, whichever you think is the most important. In the chat box, you can write whatever you think is the most important. Very good. So very smart crowd here, most of us are writing body language. Some of us are writing voice. Some of us are writing word. Some of us are writing word and body language. So let's understand this. Let's understand this. In communication, this is how the contribution of each component is. This is called 7-38-55 rule. Words are only 7%. 38% is the voice or tone, voice tone modulation or pauses, and 55% is the body language. 55%, the most important element is the body language. So first is body language, second is tone and voice, and third is the word. But if we look at our communication, most of our communication is confined to the words. Most of our communication is confined towards words. Sitting here with this face, if I say, I'm excited, is it really giving you the right message? You're confused because his words are saying something, but his facial expression and his voice is saying something. For me to communicate that I'm excited, I will have to tell, I'm excited. No? Now my tone of voice is different. My facial expressions are different. And that is what giving the intended message. Why body language is so important? Because even if you are not speaking, if you are not uttering a single word, sitting there, by being present there, you are communicating a lot. The way you walk, it is communicating. The way your shoulders are, it is communicating. The way you're using your hands, it is communicating. And that's where body language becomes a very, very, very important element. So when I know that in communication, there are filters, and these are unavoidable filters. I cannot eliminate them. Then for me to reduce those filters, I need to pay attention, not only to the words. Rather, my more attention has to be towards the body language, the facial expressions, the hand gestures, the way shoulder is. Our shoulder communicates a lot. 1 inch up and it gives the aggression. 1 inch down and it shows pessimism, or maybe it gives a passive message. When I'm talking to somebody and putting my hands on my hip, It's rude. It's aggressive. If I'm making a presentation, having both of my hands on my hip, it gives a very, very aggressive message. Maybe your words are not aggressive, but your body language makes the whole message aggressive. So when I'm in communication, if I'm a sender, I need to be careful about how I'm using my body language, how I'm using my eyes, how I'm using my facial expressions. Then I have to be careful about my tone of voice. And then I have to be careful about the words. When I say words are 7%, it doesn't mean it doesn't hold the power. It holds the power. And when I'm listening, I have to observe the body language, being empathetic towards the emotions through which the message is coming. And I need to listen to the words that are uttered. And I'm being careful about this, then probably, I'm listening properly. And when it happens at both the ends, at the sender's end and at the receiver's end, at sender's end while sending the message, at receiver's end when he's listening or receiving the message, and while giving the feedback. And that's where our communication starts improving. That's where our communication starts improving. But by using this technical understanding, I will be able to send the message. I will be able to make people aware of something. But if I have to go beyond awareness and make people realize something, then I need to move further and work on my art of crafting communication so that I can send intended message. And not only I can send intended message, but I can expect action. It's not about only sending the message, but at the end of the message when I send, it should provoke the action. And that can be done by practicing the art of crafting your communication and becoming a good conversationist. By becoming a good conversationist. Communication can help you sell. Conversation will make the other person buy. Communication will help you sell. Communication will help you to make the other person aware. Conversation will help the other person to take action. And the purpose of communication is the other person acts, takes action based on the communication. So now we will be entering in the part which is about crafting your communication in such a way that it helps you to make people take action, make people realize, not only understand or not only know. Knowing will not lead to action. Realization will. And I need to craft my communication in such a way that the other person takes action. There are 4 parts to the art of crafting the communication. The first is have something good to say. In Hindi, few people say, there has to be some substance in what you're saying. Have something good to say. That's the first part of crafting your communication. Second part is say it well. First is have something good to say. and you have something good to say, that will make the other person focus all his senses to listen. And it's not only about having something good to say. Having something good to say and just mumbling won't make sense. You have to say it well. The third part is read your audience. You have something good to say. You can say it really well, but you need to know whom are you saying it to? What is the background? Where he is coming from? What is the age? What are his belief systems? Having something good to say, and you know how to say it really well. But you are speaking Hindi in China. Won't make sense. Read your audience. And the fourth one is bring intensity. Bring intensity in everything that you are communicating, conversing. Now let's go one by one. Have something good to say. How do I have something good to say? Life has so much. Life has so much that if I can recall and remember my life experiences, I will always have something good to say. It could be about my successes, it could be about my failures. Having ability to recall and remember my life experiences will give me stuff, will give me substance to speak, to say something good. Now the point is, can you really remember everything, your life experiences? Many experiences have so much to teach us, but they just go away from our life. It happens to us and then it goes away. If I have to really become a good conversationist, then I need to have a habit of writing down these experiences, putting it on the paper. What my experience taught me, what my success taught me, what my failure taught me. Can I write it at the end of the day? Because when I write it, the chances of me remembering and recalling it, revisiting the life to extract something good to say. Writing at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of the month, what I have learned from these experiences. Because sometime in life, when I'm communicating, conversing, I can quote from my life. People are not interested in numbers and data and the graphs. They're interested in life. When you can connect these numbers, these volumes, these graphs to your life experience, it becomes easy for the other person to understand. I can have something good to say from my life, from my successes, my failures. At the same time, I can have something good to say by visiting others' life, by reading about them. Each one of us in each situation can have something good to say. If I can remember and recall my life experiences. The second thing in have something good to say is prepared to say it. There are certain experiences of our life. If I share them with somebody, the person will be able to learn so much. But then I have to be effective in telling that story of mine. I need to prepare. If today I'm going to converse with my customer, have I prepared my conversation? Which life experience I can use to demonstrate him something? Preparation is very, very, even a small conversation that you're going to have with your kid, with your son, with your daughter. Don't just go and start talking. Take a pause, prepare. What metaphor I can use? What story I can use? What example I can use? What life experience I can use? Because when I put these ornaments to my conversation, it becomes something to be paid attention to. How do I get something good to say? By keeping my interest alive about the life and the people and the situations around me. Keep your interest alive. There are people who say what's happening, and there are people who say what's really happening. Both sounds the same questions. What's happening and what's really happening. But when you ask what's really happening, and you put your interest in that and go deep, you see a very different picture. And when you say that, when you see that the different picture, it gives you something good to say. Become good in storytelling. And if you can tell your own stories, nothing like it. People relate. Data, numbers create gulf. Life stories creates bridge. I firmly believe that each life on this earth is a great story. It's a great story. The guy himself could not articulate it and could not narrate it. That's all. Become a good storyteller if you want to be a great conversationalist. Be fascinated about things. Be fascinated like kids. They're fascinated about everything happening around them. And that's why that's the age where maximum learning happens. Just give me a moment. Sorry, guys. Be fascinated about things happening around you. When you're fascinated, it will give you something good to say. Life accumulates. And when you accumulate these experiences, these discoveries, these interests, the fascination about things, it gives you something good to say. If you want to have something good to say, be sensitive. Be sensitive to things happening around you. And most importantly, constantly gather the knowledge. Have have something to have depth of knowledge, but there could be many things where you can have a width of knowledge. So that in a conversation, you have something to contribute. In today's world, so much of information is flowing around us. So much of information is flowing around us, But do we have an ability to catch something good to say? Are our antennas so sharp to catch things? No. I was watching a Netflix series. I don't know whether Netflix or Amazon. It was about cricket and PPL, some IPL and all, Insider Age or something, And when I was watching that, a dialogue hit me. A dialogue hit me from a series. I just captured it. I just captured it because I know this would be something good to say. Let me share if I have it here. If you have seen that series, you all must have seen this. This is Vivek Oberoi talking to the judge, and he talks about what is judgment, and he says it is the wisdom of ages wrapped in the opinion of the moment. It is the wisdom of ages wrapped in the opinion of the moment. That is judgment. Do I have my antennas sharp enough to catch this? Because now this statement I can use, or I have already used it here while conversing with you. I have something good to say. I heard in my life somewhere, your skills will pay your bills. Your skills will pay your bills. I kept it with me. I know in my conversation, I will use it somewhere. Some of you might say, I think speaking is your profession, so you have to do it. Which profession is there in this world where you need not speak or communicate? And if you have to communicate, then let that communication be crafted. So the first point is, have something good to say. The second is, say it well. How do I say it well? The first part is having sincerity. When you're saying it, say it sincerely. When you say it sincerely, see, when you're talking to the world, when you're relating to the world can see through. If you're a salesperson, your customer can either see care for him in your eyes, your willingness to serve him, he can see in your eyes, or he can see a dollar sign in your eyes. He can see both the things. If you're sincere in your communication, he will see the willingness that you want to really solve his problem. If you're sincere enough, he will see that you want to create value for him. If you're not sincere, he will see a dollar sign, your check, your commission, your profit, the money that you want him to shed from his wallet. He will see that. and will keep you away. If you have to say it well, say it sincerely. The second part is repetition. Practice. Your skills will pay your bills. It comes so naturally because it's practiced. You get paid for the value that you create in the marketplace. It's a statement, practiced. If you have to say it well, use brevity. What is brevity? Keep it short and crisp. You will never get what you desire, but no one can stop you from getting what you deserve. A short statement talks so much about how the nature works with you. Have style. When you're saying it well, have your own style. Style matters. Style is not important only when you are standing on a stage and giving a sermon or giving a motivational talk or presentation. No. In your day-to-day conversation, let there be a style, your style. Vajpayee had his style, whether on stage or in parliament or in interview or in one-on-one conversation. वाजपेयी तो बहुत दूर का एग्जाम्पल है. In our day-to-day life, we see people have their unique style. When you have style, you're actually crafting your communication. When you're doing it sincerely, you're crafting your communication. The next part is vocabulary. As we've seen, 7% word, but vocabulary is important. Because vocabulary can expand or shrink the way you perceive the world. You have a limited vocabulary. You will be comprehending less. Seven years from now, I don't know whether you guys have heard this name, but this is a very famous name. Russell Peters, world's greatest comedian and all people talk about. I used to hate him. Today, whenever I am in a stress, I listen to him for an hour, half an hour. He talks faltu jokes. But that time I used to hate him because I could not comprehend half of what he's saying. Because I had limited vocabulary. I was in a workshop in Dubai, and there was different nationalities sitting there. And I just used this sentence, thinking on your feet. And some person who's non-English person to students say, how one can think from the feet? Limited by vocabulary. Probably I would have had a different set of words to express the same thing. So to say it well, improve your vocabulary, read, listen, identify a new word, start using it. And the last point is, don't fail to say when you have to say. Don't fail to say when you have to say. Because when you fail to say, when you have to say, it accumulates. And then it starts stinking. Say it. Craft it. Have a style, but say it. Don't leave things to, don't leave your saying to the things. Don't leave it to flowers to say something for you. Don't leave it to the gifts to say it for you. Because gifts and flowers have a limited vocabulary. Limited vocabulary. If you have to say it with the flowers. That's okay. But don't leave it to flowers to say something for you. The third part of crafting your conversation, communication is read your audience. Who are they? Where they come from? What they can relate to? Can I have something to speak to them, say to them with what they can relate to? If you're talking to a kid, start your conversation with Chota Bheem. He can relate to it. And then he gets engrossed in your conversation because you have started your conversation from the point where he can relate. If you're talking to an old age guy, start with the importance of the wisdom and the experiences that one can accumulate. He can relate. He has accumulated the experiences. Otherwise, for a kid, it would be just, he would say, Khatam karo yaar isko. Read your audience. Where they come from. What is the background? What has been their life? What they can relate to? What they cannot relate to? Don't talk about that. Something that they haven't seen. I've seen many people talking to their salesperson about few hundred crores. Doesn't understand. Haven't seen. Can't comprehend. Talk to them of the field. Talk to them of the experience when your sweat from your cheek goes down till your stomach, when you're walking on that street as a salesperson. Talk to them about these things. They can relate. Don't talk to them about the strategy. They don't understand. They understand beat plan. They understand route plan. Talk to them what they can relate to. And you will be able to talk to them what they can relate to if you can read your audience. And the last part in crafting your conversation is bring intensity. Bring intensity. Words loaded with emotions, that will bring intensity. Well-chosen words with measured emotions. Word is powerless without loading emotions in it. If I throw a pin at you, a pin, say a safety pin we use for stationary pin. If I throw it to you, it will just come, touch and go. But if I tie that pin to an iron rod and throw it to you, it will pierce the heart. Emotions are those iron rods. Use it for good. To appeal, to inspire, to motivate, to convince. Use words with emotions. but measured emotions. Okay. If you use a cannon to kill a rabbit, rabbit will be killed, but you will get nothing. So be careful using emotions with the word. And when you use these ornaments of having something good to say, saying it well, read your audience, and have intensity, that's where you'll start crafting your communication. Conversationist you will become. You know? And being a conversation is important to a mother when she's talking to her teenage daughter. It is important to craft a conversation when a leader talking to his follower or his subordinate. Crafting communication is important when a salesperson is talking to his customer. Crafting communication is important when you're talking to a colleague, when you're talking to a friend, when you're talking to a fellow society member. Crafting communication is very, very important. So here, let's take a pause and go for any questions on what I have conversed with you up to now. We can take some of the questions here and then we can close for the day. If you have a question, you can raise the hand. Apurvi probably can unmute you or allow you to speak. We can take your question and try to answer. Oh, it seems there are no questions, there are no hands raising. So probably I have made it very easy, or it has all gone in the air. You know? Shamji?
Yeah,
Yeah, it seems there are no questions.
no questions. I think you've communicated very well then.
Thank you. But still, we are open that our email address is available. Anybody has a question, we can take the question on.
Yeah, I think Manoj has raised his
We
hand.
have one question, sir.
Okay. Yes, Manoj ji. You can unmute Manoj. Manoj ji, I have allowed you to talk. You can unmute yourself and.
Hi, Kundan. Good evening. It was a very nice session. I have something more to add, a small point.
Yes, Manoj.
Is that in any conversation, you basically get 3 minutes to hold on or hold off.
Absolutely.
In those 3 minutes, if you are able to latch on, you are the conversation is latched with you or the customer or anybody. And that should be truthful. In the sense, people can see the chaff from the grass. If you do not speak the truth, people can see the chaff from the grass. So the ability to hold an audience, you under 2 minutes. On a phone call, it is under just 2 minutes, whether you get a call in or whether you got a call out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When
And
you
a lot-
start, sorry. Yes,
Yeah.
Manoj, continue.
And I will advise, although I am not a big conversationalist, but I do try to listen both on a video as well as an audio, how some of the great conversationalists are able to hold an audience. The techniques can vary. If you look at Atal Bihari Vajpayee, he only talks with help of pauses. And if ever you get a chance to listen to Adolf Hitler, the way he starts very slowly and he builds a crescendo, and the crescendo, the crowd goes with him.
Absolutely.
So finally, the art of conversation is finally an art form. which has to be refined over a lifetime.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Manojji. So those first moments, as Manoj was talking about, be truthful, being sincere. If you're truthful, sincere, he can see in your eyes. All the things that we discussed contributes, the crafting of the conversation contributes to get that person latched on to the conversation. Probably he might have given you 5 minutes and then he ends up conversing with you for 2 hours.
And last but not the least, the words are you should know to whom you are talking. Be very sensitive, be very sensible. Speak less, hear more. The more you hear, you better you're able to hold a conversation.
Absolutely.
So you have to actually listen more, speak less. And that's the way you are able to hold on to a conversation. Because remember one thing for any conversation, if I'm silent, there is nothing to say. But if I say some words which you lose, which is derogatory or may hurt you, that may remain for the rest of the words, cannot be taken back. So sorry doesn't bring the words back. The emotion hurt remains there. So you should be very sensitive to what you speak, where you speak, to whom do you speak. If you see Bala Saheb Thackeray talking, that is another art form. On a Dashera day, if people can follow Marathi, it's still better, but still you can still see it irrespective of the language as well. It's an art form. But if the same way you have people like Sharad Pawar, who really cannot hold a conversation, but he's got other techniques to hold on. Each person, the way of holding is different.
Right. Great. Thank you, Manoj, for contributing.
I think Suresh also had something to say. I'll just ask him to unmute. Yeah, Suresh, you wanted to?
Yeah. I just wanted to ask about the concepts of non-verbal communication.
So in non-verbal communication, when you're talking about email or when you're talking about a message that we draft, the body language is the one thing which is the most important element, which is not there. And that is where we have to be careful about the words. How can we embody our emotions through those words? That has to be taken care. Nowadays, a lot of emojis and other things are coming in, which is helping us to convey the emotion. So non-verbal communication, it's a subject in itself. So if Shyamji allows me some time, in couple of weeks, we can always have a special, but I won't be able to give justice to the non-verbal mein karna kya hai, in the time that we have available now. But yes, we can always hold one session for the whole non-verbal communication part.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions?
Okay. There was one hand which was raising again and again when we started, but now I cannot see that. Okay, maybe by technical error it was happening. Shyamji, so if there are no questions, with the promise to have a session on non-verbal communication, techniques of non-verbal communication, we will have one more session. And here I would like to thank Shyamji, your RK Control, the people who have been part of this and helping us take this Gyan Jyoti ahead. I thank each one of them for being part of this initiative. Yeah. And thank you for giving us opportunity to speak into your life.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you again for your time. And we will be really happy to have a second session on nonverbal communication. Thank you for, coming forward for that too.
Sure, sir.
And thank you, everyone. Thank you for participating. And we hope to see you again next time. Please send your feedbacks on our email. Thank you.